I'm Chuck Mitchell, the town moderator, and thank you for coming tonight. You were all here because I was exercising my dual responsibilities as moderator of appointing this committee. So I've introduced myself, and why don't we start right over here?
This is Swancott.
Anything else you want to add other than your name? That's up to you.
I'm a landlord in the town of Tilton, and I live in the town of Northfield.
Dari Sasan, I'm the land use coordinator for the town of Tilton.
Pat Constantino, I'm a selectman in the town of Tilton and a landlord.
Heath Gaynor, I'm a landlord in the town of Tilton.
Marion Abbott, I'm a tenant in the town of Tilton.
Nancy Trousdale, I'm a landowner in the town of Tilton and a landlord in Northfield and Franklin. That matters too.
Jenny Laminuzzi, I'm a tenant in Tilton.
Tim Jubert, I work for the Tilton Fire Department, I'm sure you can fire prevention.
Kristen Vaughn, I am a real estate agent who used to manage Bayside rentals. I have a lot of experience with rentals. I'm also a landlord, and I live in the town of Tilton. I'm landlord in the town of Tilton too.
Okay. Are you ready?
All right. So everybody's gonna raise their right hand. And I don't think I'll make them all read it.
It's the funds.
Yeah.
Take the oath.
Well, you're being recorded now. So
Read it all again.
I'm Cindy Reinhardt's town clerk tax collector. Okay, raise your right hand and read off the top of your, it says, I,
Pat
Dari
Constantino,
Sasan,
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent on me as a Tilton Housing Standards Board member to the best of my abilities, agreeable to the rules and regulations of this Constitution and the laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help me God.
yay. So if y'all put your signature on there, data for today. And you're gonna sign these,
I am.
please?
I am. Also, while I am signing these, I passed out a single sheet of paper that was dealing with the warrant article that was passed at town meeting this year. And just so that you know, and I'm sure you do,
Mine's different than everybody
the last paragraph is your charge.
Now, is this the same as the one that was almost presented at the town meeting?
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yes.
as amended. Right.
And your job, basically, as a committee, is not necessarily to take this particular document and amend it to fit what you think belongs in the town of Tilton, but it is to come back by the 1st of February next year after first holding 2 public meetings, and to come back with something that can be brought to the town meeting of next year. And so it's a very large task as I see it, and I think I may have already expressed in some form in communications with you, this may require more than just an occasional meeting. I'm thinking that you might be needing to try to set some kind of a schedule of the possibility of a couple of times a month. And I do have a calendar here for the town hall for its meeting spaces. I know there are people here tonight who may not be available on Wednesday nights. One of the convenient things tonight was my wife was here at 5 o'clock. I chose 7 o'clock because this space was available. And I'm very grateful that you all showed up tonight. In a few minutes, I'm hoping that I can be able to suggest that this group, and you can have a discussion amongst yourselves about electing a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. One of the things that will need to happen is that the secretary will need to keep some minutes, that they will need to be sent into the town, and the minutes will be posted on the town's website, along with all the committee names and so forth.
And a copy needs to come to
And
my
a
office.
copy does need to be sent to Cindy. We do have some people here with some varied backgrounds and interests. We're hoping whether anyone, the folks serving here on this committee, whether you're a landlord or a tenant or someone else who's whatever, that we want to make sure that the protections of both landlords and tenants are considered and properly done so before you make any kinds of decisions to move the thing forward. This is going to be open to the public, and I'm sure in the future you will find more participation. I will tell you that there were a few more names that were submitted at town meeting. You were the, excuse my expression, pick of the litter. You were the ones that I chose to serve on the committee, and we do have both Heath and my neighbor up there on the hill, Nancy Trousdale, as alternates. I do know that there are some folks who've already told me that they will not be able to make every single meeting, whether it's for health reasons or due to travel, and that's why we have a couple of alternates that also wanted to be involved in this, and I hope that we will do that, or you will do that. Also, because not only the meeting's going to be open to the public, but I'm hoping that whoever chairs this will make sure to take public input at each of your meetings. I want to wish you very well with your task. I'm suggesting that you elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. Now, anyone want to talk? I'm basically done.
What will the duties of the chair and the vice chair entail?
Well, I think the chair would be responsible of trying to put together an agenda for each of the meetings. Probably whoever is selected or elected to do that to begin with. Doesn't have to necessarily be something that's cast in stone, but it would probably be better if you had a decision of someone who's willing to accept a little extra responsibility. It will be having to set the meeting dates, to set the weekly or bi-weekly agendas, to keep people informed. Primarily, I don't see more than that because it's supposed to be a committee or a board, and you'll be functioning as that. So when it gets around to taking votes, you'll be doing this by, consensus and
They conduct the meeting.
conducting the meeting, sort of like I'm sitting here doing now.
They sort of make it flow, if you would.
The vice chair.
If the chair's not available, the vice chair would go to.
Can we nominate
Certainly.
Lisa? I know I've been in meetings with you before, and so, make sure there's a strong, position and she's rather organized. And,
If I had my
so-
rathers, I'd rather be chair than secretary, because I want to
That's what I'm
focus
saying, I would
on
like you to be. as
the
chair.
information than trying to record what everybody's saying or doing, or, I'm
But-
fine with email and letting everybody know what's going on, and I've ran meetings before. I would defer, I don't know, if Pat wanted to run it, I mean,
I'd like to
That's
nominate,
great.
I would love to nominate Dowery. I think he's a focal point, centerpiece for town hall. He works here at town hall. I think that email-wise, he would be probably one to get everybody, get in touch with everybody if needed. If we needed a question or two, he would be readily available for us. No, I certainly don't want to be chair, but I would like to nominate Dowery for the chair.
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's fine. I think for some of the same reasons she brought up, I'm here essentially, feet away to my office, so I think it makes sense. I'd be willing to take that on, but,
I'd be willing to let you have it. And I'll vice chair.
Okay, in the absence of a
Right.
chair, all those in
Okay.
favor of Dari, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Dari, you're it.
Yay,
Perhaps, Lisa, you would like to accept the responsibility of being the vice chair.
I would.
yay.
All those in favor of Lisa as the vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? You're it. Now all we need is a recording secretary. By the way, my thought on that is, if you've ever read minutes from some of the meetings of other organizations or boards in this town, they sometimes, write down like every single word said. I'm not looking for someone to do that. There is going to be this tape, which is going to be on your meetings. It'll be available to the town, so the town will know what's going on. But I think you need to keep track of visitors, people who are going to be speaking at the meetings, basic concepts, motions, and whether the motions fly or not. And other than that, I think anyone should be able to do it, but I'm not looking for anybody that, if you meet for 2 hours of having 6 pages or 10 pages of notes, that's crazy. Okay, that said, is there anyone here willing to volunteer?
I'll volunteer.
Kristen,
I've written them up before, so.
Nice.
all
I don't
those in
like it,
favor
but I'll
of
do it.
Kristen, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. You're it.
I do have a little recorder if you want.
That's
Yeah,
okay, I do it
we
with my phone.
Okay.
Gary, since you're now the chair,
All right,
I am going to depart.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
And at this point, you can select your own meeting times.
All right.
I wish you well.
Can I set it a big tip?
You can, it's a can.
Okay, you do.
Yes, yes. So I guess,
I would like to suggest another meeting for you because budget, and that starts in September every Wednesday.
I want that up.
Thank you very
I will
much.
not be able to participate in this meeting, it will be next Wednesday.
Mine will be Thursday, but
that you
We
do
have
not want to
conflicts
do?
Wednesday,
I do, any other day of Wednesday is fine with me.
Is Kathy hiding in here, or is she next door already? Yeah.
Thursdays I have budget, so in there.
All right,
Wednesdays also.
all right.
Sounds like Tuesdays.
Tuesday
Tuesdays
could,
and Fridays.
and,
There's, Tuesdays is a conflict with our.
well, Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month, I can do. And that would be actually ideal for me because that would keep me on a Tuesday schedule. So if we want to do first Tuesday of every month, Chuck mentioned maybe twice a month. I wonder if we could start once a month.
Yeah.
What do you guys think
I
about?
agree with that. I think we
Okay.
should start once a month
Yeah.
and go from there. 'cause
Right,
the
if it
first
gets to the
few
crunch
months-
time, then you start having to meet more often than.
Right.
Beginning of May, I'm gonna be in the hospital for 3 weeks, so I won't be, if we do the beginning of May, I won't be here for that meeting, but the rest of them I'll be fine.
All right.
The third, Tuesday,
Uh,
Fifth.
Third,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at April.
Yeah.
You were right.
So May 3rd would be our first meeting, or our
so at 7,
first, okay.
Do
Actually,
I
I
need
will be able to make that one, because I don't go in the hospital, so that'll be great.
Do folks want to do 7, or is earlier, what?
I'm waiting for any.
I got it. Thank you.
I'm okay with just about everything,
Seven's
yeah,
usually,
seven's.
for me, that's.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
same here.
Me too.
I have epilepsy, I can't drive, so if you can arrive at 7's good for me.
Okay,
So, looks like 7.
all right, yeah, May
Should we
3rd.
factor about an hour?
Two,
Well,
two maximum, I would say.
Yeah, so we should put a cap on it at some
Right,
point.
and then cut it off to the next one.
Okay.
Otherwise you'll be
Having
here.
input from the
So-
public.
Right.
right, so 2, we'll generally cut them off at 2 hours. I'm a big fan of an hour and a half. I feel like after an hour and a half, I start to lose my attention, but 2 hours as a limit makes sense to me, yeah. How, I guess, can we go around and just, how familiar is everyone with this? It's like a 32-page document.
Did we adopt this from somewhere, or is this something that somebody just came up with?
Came from the town of Pittsfield.
The town of Pittsfield.
I have extensive experience with rental properties, managing, and also the laws of the state of New Hampshire regarding some of this stuff. Not necessarily the code enforcement laws, I'm guessing, are you the health?
I am not the health, I do the life safety side of things.
Catherine's
Okay.
the
I'm sorry, who?
The lady.
Catherine.
All right, perfect. Oh, okay. All right, perfect.
Yeah.
So, as far as having, this is quite extensive, so
Very.
there's a lot.
I started it and then I was like, I'm just gonna wait, cause I figure we're gonna go through it page by
Same
page,
here.
and
I mean, I've read it a few times, but.
some of it's kind of depressing
Yeah.
personally.
So some of it,
Yeah.
it was borrowed from the town of Pittsfield. There are other documents out there, like the town of Belmont has a very small, couple of pages document that kind of you can go over it. I do have it, I believe it's upstairs though.
Could we get a copy of it maybe for the next meeting so we could look at it and
Send
see
it out.
what
There
the
is
differences
Email
are?
would be good.
Basically,
Yeah, emails
our
too.
Bible to go by would be the New Hampshire
This is the national.
the national,
Housing standards, okay.
housing standard. That would be what we really should be focusing and getting our ideas from.
Is that available online?
Yes.
Sure.
Do we know if if a lawyer has looked over any of this? Because,
Yes.
I mean,
A lo-
were there any suggestions or anything on it? Because this seems like some of this would violate.
a lawyer has a lot.
Uh-huh.
No.
This
Well,
seems
yeah.
very
If I may
intrusive.
make a suggestion, if it's
Based on
totally-
building code.
Just ask Catherine to step in and just take a few minutes and give a brief history of how we got to this place. And then that would kind of answer some of the questions that are coming up right now. And then we can take it from there because, you know, just, because there's a lot of unanswered questions that the committee
Absolutely.
doesn't know how we got to town meeting from there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds
what
like a
prompted
great
the whole,
idea.
Just ask
What
her, I
prompted
think
the
she'll
whole
be able
thing?
to give you this.
Catherine, would you mind?
No.
Oh, that's my question.
I have to get my calendar back in my head. So the selectmen have been working on this for 2 years. It has gone to attorneys, local government center. I talked to people in Pittsfield about it, they've had attorneys look at it. It's basically based on the building codes that the state adopted, which is, well, Tim knows, the National Plumbing Code, building codes, residential building codes. There's a plethora of them, that's what it was based on. Town meeting of 2015, we were going to present it. And the selectmen decided to back off from it. I don't know if you all remember a town meeting last year. And decided to work on it more extensively and have one of our town attorneys look at it. And he did look at it for most of the year. And came back to us, was it February 2nd? So it's not, it would not have been a finished document had town meeting adopted it. And we would have, if we had gone through with presenting that document, we would have told them that. And I think I did at town meeting anyway. It's a good document, but it's not complete. I think it's more complicated than it needs to be. Health offices in this state, there's a lot of laws that we use. A lot of them are very subjective. 147 is one, very subjective. All it takes is a suspicion. A health officer in this state can enter onto anybody's property with reasonable suspicion. Even the selectmen, assessors can't do that.
Reasonable suspicion of what?
Anything, odor, smell, visual.
A suspicion of it, like, you have to have a suspicion of something, you know, I mean, it's like, okay, that there's death, or, you know, a suspicion of
No, I
rodent
think there will-
infestation. Like, you have to be suspicious of a particular
Something
thing,
happened,
right?
well, I can't just, I'm not gonna make it up, but
No, but-
today, for example, there's a property, somebody had called me up last week. Funny odor. Okay, well, what kind of a funny, it's just not right, this is just a real funny odor, okay. So down to River Road I go, and sure enough, septic odor, not a funny odor, but a septic odor. And the owner came out, what are you doing on my property? And I had knocked on the door with no answer, left my card there. Explained to him why I was there, and he told me I couldn't be there, and I said, well, and I explained to him the law, and I carry a copy of it with me, and, you know, we went over it, and then he backed off, and, you know, I apologized if I seemed intrusive, but explained to him the situation, and continued on looking, and he came with me. And so, and the reason I'm saying this is because this ordinance is not for the health officer to be able to go into anybody's property, because I already have that authority. If I go into an apartment inside a building, I do need permission. If I don't get permission and I do feel I need to enter, then I have to go to the court and get a court order, 548. So this document really, for me, is to let landlords know what they have to do to provide a safe, adequate housing for tenants.
I have a question. So you said that the state of New Hampshire right now does have the authority to go in, and the state has a housing standard?
It's a minimum housing standard, 48A:14, minimum housing standard, and it is the bare minimum. It is subjective, but it is bare minimum.
Can we
You
have
have
a
to go
copy
to
of
court
that?
though, to come
Right.
into your.
Yeah, in fact, I can print it
Oh,
out.
I thought she was just saying.
I can
the
print it up
state.
tonight before you leave.
If
Most
you
of-
refuse entry, he has to go to court to go in.
I've never been refused entry by a tenant, which is interesting.
Because they're usually the
Right.
ones.
I've had landlords tell me that I couldn't enter into tenants' apartments after they'd already said yes. That was an interesting conversation as I stood back and let the tenant and the landlord have their.
So does the town feel that the state isn't handling it
The
enough?
state-
Or is it,
the
why
s-
does the town feel that?
Because the state doesn't investigate, it's the
Right.
local health officer that does.
Right.
So the reason for this is, like I said, so that landlords will know what they have to provide tenants. The housing standards in the state RSA now does not cover any of the building code requirements. So one of the things I come across all the time are bathrooms with no type of ventilation. No window, no mechanical vent. And by the building code that the state adopted, that is required. In fact, I have a landlord that lives in California that tells me she doesn't have to comply with state code because she lives in California.
We
So
do
hence-
have a lot of out-of-state landlords.
Yeah.
So if we have a housing standard, then there's no question. Landlords know what they have to provide. I'm not gonna find people living in stone foundations and dirt floor with absolutely no amenities for human habitation.
Mhm.
And
In
you-
cabins that were designed for summer rentals with snow blowing underneath the door, and, I mean, people are desperate to rent things, and landlords like money.
And we had some very substandard living.
But you
Very
have
substandard.
you have already in place the wherewithal,
Building
the
codes.
building codes to enforce those without this per se. I mean, you already have those.
Remember, I said reasonable suspicion. One of the things this housing standard does is require an inspection once a year of every transient rental unit in the town.
But I guess why are we focusing
That's
on
in-
just landlords and not everybody, if that's what, I mean, the
All
housing standards.
businesses, right,
The
not just
housing
landlords.
It's not
Right,
rental
it's not
standards,
just-
it's housing standards.
Right, it's not
Yeah.
just
It's rental standard,
landlords.
this is for rental units. A private residential dwelling, you buy a house, you live in your house the way you want to, it's your choice. Renters really don't have a choice, most of them are out there desperate to rent, and they'll rent anything to have shelter. Your code enforcement officer of your town, when you come in for a new building, has the authority for a new structure to make sure they're built to standards. But
I think the
Or
whole
if you buy an
inspection,
old building,
like,
if you take over an old building, it has to be brought up to certain codes.
no,
well, that's a problem too. I
Well,
mean, there's
Right.
my building's in the built in the 1900s.
If it's a rental
right?
unit.
Yeah, mine must be
Yeah.
if it's a
1890.
rental unit.
Right.
I mean, granted, I brought mine up to standards, but I've just, what my
Right.
point, I think, is that it's almost like with these, us making it for landlords, we're almost holding landlords to a higher standard than we're holding anybody else in this town.
Yeah.
If we're saying, we're gonna come in and
Including
inspect your
businesses.
house and look
Yes.
at it, and,
Right.
I mean,
Well,
I'm a
and it's
landlord,
intrusive
The law
to-
already requires
Right.
those codes and those documents in front of the National and Pittsfield. The law already requires it.
Well, it doesn't
Right.
But it
require
requires it for
yearly
everybody.
or 2 yearly inspections
No.
into every tenant's house, and then if you have, the town's gonna come in and say, I'm gonna inspect all your units every 2 years, and I'm gonna go into the tenants and say, I need to come inspect every 6 months to a year and say,
Right.
what's going on in there because of all these extra
I don't
standards
do
that we
that.
can't control.
I don't disagree.
Right.
for that too.
And I don't
And,
disagree
right,
that
the
we need
cost.
something, but I just think that what we're
Right.
talking about is just rewriting the current code enforcement rules to say, okay, landlords, you have to follow this, but everybody else doesn't. I mean, that's what this,
And
that's
extra
what this
costs
says
for the
to me.
landlords and tenants, and the taxpayers, if you, because I don't know, I mean.
But we're not
you have to be-
rewriting the code enforcement rules, we are creating a housing standard ordinance.
But don't we have that with,
That's very separate than a code enforcement rules and regulations. We have a code enforcement officer that sees to it, along with, in conjunction with fire prevention, that has certain code and requirements of housing. That's very separate from what we're trying to procure here. What we're trying to do here is to have a standard of certain living that is expected, and it doesn't have to be as stringent, and we know that it doesn't have to be as stringent as what's in that blue piece of paper right there. And it can be nowhere near that, and that's up to us. But what we need to do is give the authority for them to go in and inspect and say, okay, yeah, this is wrong. Because not all landlords are up to this standard. And we know that as us, as a selectman and health officer, we know that not all landlords, I mean, there's a scale, just as there is the scale in living, and not all landlords are a number 10.
and I understand the reason for having something, but I think what we're trying to determine is exactly what that something is supposed to be, because we already have code enforcement, and we can already go in, whether it's a landlord or somebody else, and say, this is, you know, you don't have ventilation in your bathroom. We don't need a housing standard to say to a landlord, you need to come in. Why, if you can do that on your own?
Because the
So you can't
landlord,
go in and inspect.
property owners don't do it on their own.
Right.
Just go in randomly.
We can't.
They-
The new RSAs say that we can't. I cannot go into one of my
Yeah.
properties and just knock on the door and say, you know what, in a week's time, I'm gonna come and just
Yeah.
inspect to make sure everything's safe.
In the last
It's
2
against
years.
the law, they've changed it, like, I said this at the town meeting,
Yeah.
that if we do these things that are in here or close to them, we as landlords have no control, or that we cannot inspect the building. I wanna do it to a place in Franklin, because I'm pretty sure it's disgusting, and I cannot go in there and say, I just need to make sure there really aren't maggots all over the kitchen floor like your neighbor said. I can't do that.
I'm pretty
Why
sure I
can't
may
you?
have, because they've
Because
changed the
it's-
RSAs in the
yeah.
last 2
Yeah,
years.
they did.
Yeah,
they
you guys should know,
We can-
540A clearly states how
They
a
just changed it.
landlord,
No,
Can
they've
enter-
changed it. They changed it in the last 2 years.
I just read it the other day, I just printed it out for a tenant
I
next
I
door.
believe I have a copy of that at home somewhere, and I
Let
will
me print it
double
up
check.
for you.
Well, because I mean, we just went through this
Yes,
as
so
well,
did I.
and we were told,
I just
I believe
went
I have a
through it
copy
with a
of it.
previous tenant. I mean, I had
Oh,
maggots
yeah,
in my
I get that.
refrigerator. It was the most disgusting apartment I've ever seen in my entire life. I didn't grow up that way, I've never seen it. I was just aghast by it. It just was unbelievable. And I wanted to prevent that with the next tenant. Now, this was just recently, this is not even a year yet. And I was told by legal that I could have that in as a lease and say that I could go in and inspect. And that's part of the lease, and they signed the lease that says, yes, I can go in and inspect. And if they're okay with that and they sign that, that's fine. And I have that in my lease on a regular basis. And according to 540, in conjunction with 540 and having that in the lease, I'm within my rights to knock on the door and say, in 3 days from now, I'm coming in to inspect.
it used to be a 24-hour notice for inspection, it used to be. But they've changed that, because, I mean, we've gone in and inspected, but.
They did recently make a
Yeah.
change to that, because I took a class, I got the email from the Real Estate Commission. I have it somewhere, I'll find it.
What if,
Um,
do you know if, like she said, putting it in the lease
I
could
believe-
change that?
I
I don't think you can put anything in a lease that is against the
Against
It's
the
law.
law.
just so hard for a landlord to make sure that all the
It's
codes
the
are,
same-
you know, if you
right.
can't.
Being a landlord is hard as it is. Every law out there is
Right.
against being a landlord.
Which was my point at the town meeting. I don't want little kids living in squalor and disgusting situations. You know, I can call DCYF and I can say, I think this is not okay. And if DCYF chooses not to inspect it, that's their deal. When the neighbors say that, you know, there's this funny smell coming from that apartment, I can call the town office or, you know, the health inspector and say, I think, you know, there's a problem here. But I cannot go in unless a tenant says to me, hey, there's water rushing down the inside of my wall, then I can go in and
If
fix
there's damage,
it.
then you can.
But
Right.
if they don't tell me that that's happening,
We
I
don't
can't go in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
would
get
think too
that.
many tenants will just call the housing, you know, just call and talking to the landlord first. give the landlord an opportunity. I just feel like we see tenants just,
They're like, oh, look at them, they're violating this, and
Yeah,
I'm mad at
yeah.
them, and I'm gonna call and.
Usually they call Manchester Union later.
I really do understand the need for something. We do have a lot of, especially out-of-state
They're not all
landlords.
great landlords. There are some landlords that, I agree, there are some landlords that are either out of state, or they're just not as attentive as probably the ones sitting here.
I mean,
That-
is it really outnumbering the ones that are?
No, it doesn't outnumber them, but it does really affect the community. It sure does.
And I can see that with some things, but I don't know what this ordinance is going to do other than what the code is.
I would say as a
Surveys.
committee, my personal feeling as a committee, because I've read it, I've studied it, as a landlord, I really cringe myself as it. I wouldn't, to me, I personally wouldn't even use that as a guide. That would be my recommendation, that we didn't use it as a guide.
Start
That
from
we
scratch.
start from scratch and then we say what's needed in the best interest of the town of
And
Tilton.
I think we should
I
have
totally
those,
agree.
I think we should have the code, building codes
And then-
while we're doing this. Because I don't think we
Yeah, I
can
agree.
do
Well,
this without
I think
having.
having the building codes, but like you said, I mean, you have an 1890 building, I have a 1900s building. I mean, I have an apartment that does not have a humongous window that they can fit their tank in to get into their bedroom, which happens to be on the third floor that they're not gonna get a ladder truck over there anyways. They have to carry a ladder all the way around and it's, well, right, and so am I not gonna be able to have that as an apartment anymore because it's
I
not.
don't think we need to be
Right.
that specific. I think we need to
Same
cover,
thing with
And then
like,
do we need?
I think we need to have the intent of what it is that we need for the health officer to get, you know, to be able to correct the insufficiencies in a manner that we can do it in a rightful way, and then still be able to do the job that's necessary.
I agree with that, as long as it doesn't cost the taxpayers more money, the tenants more money, or the landlords more
This
money.
is residential.
Funding is gonna be
So
the
this is
biggest
only
thing, the biggest
residential?
hurdle.
If you
I
can
think
still do
that's
it with
in
what you
there.
already have, your health officer, your building inspector, it's, I agree with you, I was saying I agree with you, but I don't want it to cost tenants more money, landlords more money, and, you know, the taxpayers more money, right, to do this.
Fees
All
are
right.
gonna be put onto the tenants.
They will, and the taxpayers.
Why don't we,
Exactly.
sort of, I think, you know, to me tonight was intended very much to be an organizational meeting. I think it's, I'm
We
glad
were
to hear
trying
we
to have a
have.
starting point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're kind
I don't know
of
why
like
we're
figuring
here.
that out.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
and so I guess my thought would be that, you know, probably end this meeting here soon tonight unless folks, you know, have specific things you're dying to talk about. But maybe what I'll do is start working on the agenda for our May 3rd meeting, circulate that, and maybe take the opportunity that we have maybe a couple weeks before that meeting to contact some of you individually and just learn kind of where you're coming from and educate myself a little bit more on the issues and help use that to feed into the.
Excuse me, I don't agree with contacting us individually. I think we should do it as a meeting, as, you know, everybody gets, you hear everybody's
So you-
opinion.
So,
Right,
so
it's what it is.
Becomes a meeting.
Right.
well, no, if I were, I mean, if you have a 5-member board and 2 board members, talk and learn from each other and get information from each other. For instance, I might call one of you and, you know, say, so what do you know about this 540? I would like to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Could you email and CC everybody?
So,
No, that's where you
That's
get
a
into the
meeting.
risk of having
Yeah, that's a
an unnoticed meeting. When you talk one-on-one, you're generally safe because you're keeping it below a quorum. But anyway, that's fine. I don't have to contact
My
people.
only other thing with just this is that with the town of Pittsfield, I talked to somebody that was on that board, and he said for their town, because of the legal and the type of inspector they had to have and what they did, the fees were very minimal compared to their costs, so it increased their taxes, increased their tenant rent, and increased, you know, overall for the town, and that's great, and so, and I'm really looking to be, like I said, I agree with having something, but not at the expense of the tenants, the landlords, and the town itself.
I will be sure.
So I look at this as a guideline for property owners that rent readings, rent multiple units. I think it's something that you can have. Obviously, there's only 3 people that not building these buildings. And there are a lot of rental units. It's not possible to get everywhere all the time. It's not realistic. So if we have a document that people know this is what's required if I'm gonna rent this, that's a guideline. Now, this is just crazy what's in there as far as I'm concerned. When we form this guideline, we have to remember there's already things in play. So we've talked about that. This involves health code, building code, safety. The town of Tilton has adopted this. I don't know if the town of Tilton has adopted the building code, the state building code. I'm not sure. So for enforcing standards, we want to make sure that those standards are probably adopted. I don't know that.
The state building codes,
Right.
The town of Tilton? The town of Tilton never adopted any building codes, the district did.
But they're active, you know.
But they are required.
Yes, you're right, but that's just something to think about. When we make this guideline, I think it's important that we try not to change anything that is legally that's adopted.
It's already adopted.
That's already
Correct.
adopted.
Right.
So it's important that we have, you know, references and good documentation when we try to make these things. I think it just needs to be basic, it needs to be standard, and it's a guideline. And it should really clearly state, you know, whether it's a multi-unit, a single unit, or a room. You know, we have hotels that rent on weekly, monthly basis as well. So we just need to try to keep that all in the big picture when we're trying to do this.
Inclusive, right.
That's my 2 cents.
I have the Belmont one that I can give to you as a guide if you would like, and then you disperse it to the committee.
Well, yeah, thank you. That's kind of what I was thinking,
Oh, sorry.
in preparing for the next meeting. Perhaps, again, contacting each of you, and inviting you to definitely contact me and each other, as long as we're not violating meeting rules. What I would like to do is get some of these documents that folks have mentioned and these other processes that are in place, or these other regulatory regimens that are in place, and get a little more sense of those, and maybe even circulate those and then talk about those at our next meeting, if that works for folks.
can you send them out, like the Belmont one, can you send that electronically to all of us and say, like, this is
What they
for the
use.
next meeting, as long as
I don't know
we
about for the
reply?
next meeting. I don't
I'm just
know.
saying-
Yeah.
I'm saying, is that legal? Instead of,
Oh,
because I know
yeah.
you said we couldn't CC and, you
Yeah,
know,
basically-
reply all, but you can
We can
send
do that.
everybody a document
Yeah, like
for
Chuck
what
sent us.
else.
You
Chuck sent
can't
us this one.
deliberate. You can't deliberate over email, and when you do, so what I'll commonly do with other boards is, if I do send an email to the whole group, I'll put something at the end saying, please don't reply all. So, because then we're starting to get into a back and forth where we're talking about stuff in basically an invisible meeting that most
Usually
people
what we
don't
do
know
when we send out a document ahead of time at the selectmen's meeting, we usually say, FYI, this will be discussed on Thursday night's meetings, but this is, you know, to prepare for.
So can we do that with the building codes, the health codes, the life and safety codes, and the Belmont standards?
Yeah, so I,
Yeah, you need to
I'm
have
not gonna
those.
read them.
I don't
So-
have
You don't have to read them all, but we can
I
at least
can't
have them to
read.
skim.
I mean, the Belmont one, but all the health codes and all, right,
I mean,
it's
that's a
huge,
lot.
right? Catherine's like, that's huge.
That-
It
Yeah,
is
that's a
huge.
huge.
The codes
what,
here.
building
are-
codes?
The building codes are huge.
But we can, I mean, we can send you the
can
link, they're
reference them.
available.
They're
on the
online.
states. Yeah.
If you go to the New Hampshire
Yeah,
State
Send the address
building
to
codes,
the
But,
online.
it's online.
obviously, you know, a lot of people have a lot to say here, so as far as organizing the meetings, I guess, you know, generally my plan, I know within the ordinance, it talks about coming up with or within this, document, it talks about coming up with operational rules and regulations. Of course, this is the document we're working on, it's not necessarily our guidebook, because it's up for debate at this point. However, I would suggest, you know, that, you know, basically, my plan would be to operate with Robert's rules, you know, standard meeting rules, making motions, seconding motions, inviting comment before voting on the motion. But also, I think it'll be important that, you know, as we get into these topics that many of you are personally very attached to it, you know, that we make sure not to be interrupting each other and speaking everybody at once. So I generally won't, and I'm not going to be the gavel banging person, but I will ask that as we go forward, we make sure we're not talking over each other. And other than that, that's about all, you know, I'd like to touch on for tonight. Again, I think we've got our next meeting set.
I think like you said, you need to set an agenda, and if we're talking about the codes, then we talk about codes, and we stay on codes and not funding. You know, funding is, you know, there'll be an agenda for funding, or an agenda for compliance and whatnot. It seems, it's very easy to get scattered over the big picture and not take it piece by piece.
Yep, I agree with you. I'm not sure we're ready to really start taking it topic by topic at our next meeting. I still think, myself, I still need more of an overview. I've learned a lot just here in this short time tonight, but I agree with you definitely. I appreciate, yeah, I think we should do that.
Just real quick, we were talking about, you know, unlawfully being able to go in, and I think in here it does cover, if we were to have a housing standards of some sort that the town has adopted, I think we would be covered as landlords, because we can, although they have restricted us for what we can go in for now, it does say in here that, no tenant shall willfully refuse the landlord access to the premises to make necessary repairs or to perform other reasonable and lawful functions commonly associated with the ownership of rentals. So if we have a housing standard, I think that paragraph will back us up as landlords in order to be able to get in, because we are talking about the lawful standards. So as far as that being an issue, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Could be wrong.
But then
I
as a
think
tenant,
we need to get in more often.
well,
I
as a
100%
tenant, how many
agree.
times do you want
Unfortunately,
your
we're very
landlord coming in and going because the town's coming in, I need to come in just because.
Personally,
you know.
I haven't.
well, I personally don't mind.
I don't
And
either.
you know, I want, you know,
I
I
haven't.
also, from
But there
a
is also
landlord's
good.
point of view too,
There's
because
quite a few people that are very private.
I have a family member that's actually a landlord, so I'm actually kind of coming from both sides too, as a tenant and the landlord side, so that's why I wanted to be on the board. Not have some tenant that was just, you know, so tenant
I
focused,
try to
but.
leave my tenants alone unless there's a problem. If they say, hey, I got a leaky faucet, I definitely wanna go fix that right away, and we'll get right over
It's
there.
causing more damage.
Exactly, or they're like, oh, I need to replace some caulk or whatever, and they're inviting you in to make repairs, and you tell them, please call us if there's repairs, but most of the time, they wanna be left alone. They don't want you in their face, they don't want you around.
They're
just-
ashamed, they don't
they're-
want you
it's
knowing
like-
how they live, you know,
Which is all well and good.
food in the
but
sink
it's
and stuff like
gotta,
that.
we gotta protect the landlords, we gotta protect where the tenant lives. And if we can't get in, then they're gonna be, they're gonna be the ones that are, you know, they might know what you mean, but they might not have a place to live. So we gotta make sure we can get what the landlords can get in.
And I know a lot of landlords have a lot of problems with this. I know you heard from people, Pat Clark heard from a lot of people,
The
that were
phone
upset
rang off
by
the
the
hook.
Oh my
privacy
gosh.
issues.
I mean, that was a prime reason why we, you know, stepped back and took a look at it and said, I think that we need to create a committee and take a look at this, and that's why we're here. That's our charge, and that's what we need to do, and we need to present it at next meeting and, next town meeting and say, this is what we came up with, and it needs to be acceptable to everyone, so.
It needs to be much more palatable.
Yeah.
So should we start by going through this, I mean, at the
wouldn't
next
even-
few meetings and see what we agree with and what we don't agree with and just cross stuff off right away?
Well, I was thinking maybe more, possibly, I've got a million different notes here. maybe that we should get these, build up our common knowledge a little bit more. I mean, maybe I'm the one who has the most to learn here, so if I'm off base, let me know. But I would like our next meeting to start with, just more discussion like we've had tonight. Maybe, this is on me, a little more organized discussion through having an agenda in place. But just, some of these factors that you guys have brought up, I thought you made a tremendous point that, like, both of you guys with the working with the existing regulatory framework and not just treating this as though it's this document that exists in isolation. I'd like to learn about those interrelationships a little bit more before the different. But yeah, at some point I see us, picking through this thing page by page and saying, no, that right there, I have some issue with that.
I think also if we, bring in the other factors like Belmont and other towns that we have, then you can see that they vary in differences. I mean, you have a 32-page versus maybe 3 or 4 pages, and they really tell the same thing, but they still support the codes, but they're written a different way. And do they still accept fees? Some accept fees, some don't. And so it would be nice to take a look at that document and then take a look at these documents and look at the differences and say, well, really, what's in the best interest here? I mean, maybe that might not even come into play.
Right. I do have a question, I don't know if anybody can answer this. It's my understanding Tilton now requires anybody who is an out-of-state landlord, don't they require a form to be submitted with
Every
a fee?
landlord.
Every landlord,
has
not
to
just out of
register with the
state.
town
Yep.
of your address, and you have to pay a fee, because the town decided that.
Okay, because when I
How
looked
often
into
is
it,
the fee?
I
Just
thought it was
once.
just,
This one time?
Just once, when you file, you have to
I-
pay a fee. It's like a $15 charge or something.
I thought there was like a 25.
Yeah,
$25
this is
was
the
for
25,
everybody.
you have to pay a
Yeah.
fee. to
Landlord
register. Did you
affidavit.
register, Pat?
Yeah, the landlord affidavit.
Huh? The landlord affidavit, have you registered?
Well, I'm saying no different towns
Yeah.
have different
Yeah.
laws for it.
But I was under the impression that Tilton was only out-of-state landlords.
Nope.
When I
No.
called-
No,
So
actually,
That's
it's
not
on
true,
the,
because when I called and asked somebody a question, they told me it was for out-of-state
It
landlords.
is,
No.
it's on,
Yeah, it's on their website.
It is on the website, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
it's for all, it's a state
Because
law.
it says,
It's a state law, you have to do it, you don't have to charge, but it's a state law that you have to register, do this affidavit with the town.
So where's that money go, the fee?
It goes to town of Tilton coffers.
I'm gonna look a little bit more into that
Conflict tax
because
collector.
Yeah, they collect it.
I've.
Goes to general fund.
I've heard many
Seems to me
classes.
when I
You only
read
have to-
that.
You do it once.
Their job.
When I read that
Right.
state law, it was
Well, town
sort of
coffers.
conditioned it. It seemed to me that there were certain landlords that wouldn't be,
Yeah.
but I was just out of curiosity. I wasn't looking as a matter.
Yeah, because I know I had to register in Northfield, but I don't
There's no fee.
recall. Right, I don't recall having to register in Franklin, and I'm not sure.
I don't know if that's because they didn't do, it's a state law, they made, in the House of Representatives, or whatever, the state made this law because of, people couldn't get a hold of their landlords in general. And so they had the towns make it, so they had to register with them, with their contact information, so.
Seems feasible.
Right, so,
Just- yeah.
it's just, but you didn't have to charge a fee for it.
What do you
to
do?
fill out a piece of paper. Right, you don't have to.
And it's, RSA 541,
Yeah.
540:1.
So we know who the others are.
And it's,
I think a lot of people are still confused, like, why we're here and why we're trying to make this committee, because it sounds like we're trying to make a committee to make it easier to enforce the building codes, life safety code, and the other. It just seems like we're here to help enforce those.
It's more than that.
I have a question. You said, the inspectors now can't really keep up on all the inspections.
Correct. So we're making
It's just
more.
made that worse.
I look at this as an educational tool.
Absolutely, it is
I-
definitely.
That's, I look at it as a way for, I wasn't aware that Tilton, you had to register to be a,
No, I wasn't either.
So, when that happens, they get this, and okay, these are your responsibilities as an owner of a rental property. I think that's what I look at it as, and it's gonna encompass, it's not gonna, I don't see it encompassing every code, because it would be huge, but the major ones.
We'd have a lot of
Yeah.
buildings
We don't
shut down
necessarily
if
have
we
to-
went that
correct.
route.
But we don't, I'm sorry.
So one of the things that I was actually thinking of
Which,
is maybe at the next meeting, I will bring a copy of the checklist that I use for rental property inspections. It has the state fire code, it has NFPA 101. It's a page and a half. It's as basic as it can be.
When do you use that inspection?
What?
Inspections.
But is that for, so I don't have my
that should be-
places,
that should be
I don't have my
available to
places
us
just
now.
like inspected. Only time mine get inspected is if they're gonna receive,
His
Yeah,
state
checklist.
funds
that should be
or-
available to all.
So we may have not, I mean, we try to get to them.
I don't own any.
Yeah, but she
Oh,
doesn't,
okay.
she's not
I'm
involved.
just,
Oh,
that's why
okay.
I'm confused, but.
See, I've never had one either.
We do.
Yeah.
I try to get in, try to get into every one at least once every 5
That's
years.
if you know about them.
That's if you know about them. Correct, that's a huge part of it.
We don't necessarily have to make the ordinance have inspections, or we could make them, if we wanted to keep something like this, we could make them be inspected at the onset of getting registration, registered, that's when.
Well, see, that's Catherine's looking for is the permission, the power to say, I'm gonna come in and inspect your building.
Right, but we don't, we're, as the committee, we don't have to say that's what's
Well,
gonna
no,
happen.
right, exactly.
But we have other options to us, like we
Right.
could say, we'll come in and inspect when you become, when you register with the town, and then, that would.
Back to your checklist thing, now do you use that, if someone, are you the person that goes in, let's say that the town's going to, town welfare office is going to give them, help for a month and pay part of their rent, do you go and do an inspection?
Correct.
You do?
In conjunction with the health officer and the building
With
inspector.
Catherine, yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
he comes in, and he came into my building and inspected it all, just out of the blue, like,
Mhm.
just, we're gonna come through, and he made actually some recommendations, cost me some money, and I did it, but just randomly,
He came into
right,
mine
it was,
when I took it
right.
over.
But there were
Right,
some
but I'm
recommendations that
asking
I
for that.
didn't do, and I couldn't do.
For that list, though, I'm just wondering I'm just asking for clarification on when do you use it, how do you use it, so that's good, thank you.
Yeah,
Or when
no.
do you get that list? How do you know where to go?
Okay, great question. So, the town of Tilton and the town of Northfield have adopted the state fire code.
Yeah.
The state fire code references NFPA.
Yep.
It references NFPA 1 and 101. NFPA 1 covers the million NFPA codes that are out there. 101 is just life safety. So when we go to inspect, that is what we use for our reference material.
But I'm wondering how are you finding out that there's a
Rental unit,
How am I finding out there's a rental unit?
right, like, how do you know
The-
to
the
come
town
to
of
my
Tilton-
building?
The town of Tilton,
Right.
the town of Northfield, whatever they have
When
on
was
their
registered.
unregistered
Right.
rental properties.
Right.
And so we send out letters.
Like, you don't know that I own 3 places at the Highlands that I rent out,
Oh,
Right.
no.
you do now.
Yeah, you don't know that I rent out either,
But-
because I didn't know I had to
I'll see you
register,
tomorrow.
so.
Yeah.
I'll be in here tomorrow
They're
too,
fine.
Is your checklist something that's available to all landlords? Do they know about it? Do they know to even
Oh, I didn't know
look for
anything
it?
about
So when we send
That
out,
should be available.
when we send a letter to a landlord saying that, we're gonna be doing multifamily inspections or single-family inspections or rental properties, it says this is what we're gonna be looking for, and we reference the code with it and everything. Now, there's probably more to that, obviously. If we walk into a place and
But you can't get the code, like, we can't get the code, like, if you have to pay to get the code.
oh,
That's-
Yeah,
See,
that- Yeah, I know.
to get the code, you have to go to the fire
What code?
department and this NFP, whatever it is, you can't get the code. As a
I mean,
Fire
it's fine, I mean, I understand.
No, you
to
can
give
get
it
on
to
the
them
state
before.
website.
No.
you can get the state fire code,
Yeah, you
but the
can't get-
specific codes, yeah,
you
right.
can't
So whenever I do an inspection and I
Uh-huh.
ask for
It's
something to
true.
be done, I always put the
Lost
code
my mind.
in my request to know
Yeah.
that, hey, I'm just not saying you need to do this because I want you to do it, it's because it's required by the code, so.
But you didn't know that, so.
Right,
But you,
We're gonna
yeah,
fine you anyway.
well, yeah.
No, they don't
I
fine
feel
you,
like
but-
we-
yeah.
Landlords should
It's-
have that way in advance. It should be
It's
just
a
sort of
huge,
public.
I'm sure it's a
when you
huge
register,
thing.
instead of just taking the $25, there should be a packet that's handed to you. It said, these are our
And that
codes,
should be
these
So
are.
that's,
Maybe that's what we're gonna do
that's what I
here.
think
Yeah,
this,
that's good.
And I think that's
Right.
a
You
better
know-
reasoning for this housing standard board
Fee,
than
they're
just, hey,
charging
we're
a
gonna.
fee.
You made a point of, you try to get into every unit at least every 5 years. Now, what I heard was, there's more out there than you can do. Now we're creating more work for you. Are we gonna create another position or another person to do that work as well?
I don't look at it as more work
See
for,
what I mean?
I don't look at it as more work for me, I look at it as accountability. So you're registered, you have this, you know now what
Right.
is expected of you.
Right.
So if I get you on year number 10, I didn't know that, Yes, you did know that, because you're registered, you have this document.
But, look,
Yeah,
like the inspections, you know, just for case in point, and Tilton struggles with this a lot, is enforcing ordinance and what, not. But I got a building permit years ago to build my garage. He said, who's doing your site work? I said, me and my uncle, we're doing the site work. Okay, well, before you pour the footings, I have to come out and inspect. Okay. I get all the dirt work done, get ready to pour the footings, make the phone call, leave a message, make a phone call, leave a message. 4 days go by, my concrete guys are standing there ready. Pour them. And he says, okay, after the footings are poured, you need to call me before we put the frost walls on to check the footings. Okay, make a phone call, make the phone call, make the phone call. It never happens. And it's like, I just kept going. I documented every call, every date, you know, the amount of time I waited, you know, and he says, after your framing's done, I need to come and inspect your wiring and all that before you put up sheetrock and all that. I make the phone call, make the phone call, make the phone call, and no, you know. So I just feel like if we create a bunch of ordinances and rules that need to be enforced, someone's got to enforce them, or it's a waste of time to create them.
And I think that's why your idea of this being sort of the playbook, sort of the rule book, and say, if I do come and inspect you, which is the expectation even now, that we can come and inspect you, that this is what we're going to be looking for. So that everybody has the rules, we can all play Monopoly with the same rule book,
I agree.
rather than other people not having the rules.
And make
So-
all checklists and rules and everything transparent.
Yeah, I agree.
Did anybody tell you no, you can't come?
Have I? Yes.
What do you do?
I sometimes get a warrant,
Really?
yes. I thought, you know,
I just wondering, because I know another landlord, he just says, I just tell them no, and they go away. I'm like, really? Okay.
I'd be happy to have you guys come and inspect my place, it's fine, but I didn't know.
Well, there's.
When I called the town about registering, because I thought I had to, because I saw it when I moved here, somebody told me, no, it's just for out-of-state landlords. I don't know who it was a couple years ago, so I don't remember, but that's what we find out.
There's some, you know, it's, if you want to put it into a parallel with ordinances really give you, the teeth in which to, adhere to the law. And in order for, we have a parking ordinance, in order for the policeman to issue a ticket, we have to have that ordinance in place. And they can't issue a ticket for parking unless that ordinance is in place. So we can't go in and say, you know, your sewer system is pumping out into the lake, and I mean, we can't have that. It's not acceptable to any code. And now we have an ordinance that says you can't do that. And now we can say, per this and this, you can't do.
We can find you.
You know, we can fine you. And now, so unfortunately, that's what speaks to a lot of landlords, and it's, well, prove it, you know, this is what it is. And the same thing with, you know, parking, they say, well, geez, you don't, it doesn't say that. It says this, and then they try you, and then we change the ordinance, and it doesn't say that anymore. When it first came out, that's exactly what people did. They tried you with the wording and everything, and, you know, the same way with any kind of ordinance that we have. It's there only to set the guidelines so that people can enforce the rule.
so like the life safety code, because it's been adopted by the town of Tilton, we get fined for violations.
Right.
When you say it's been adopted by the town of Tilton, it was my understanding it's a state law, so
Because
why do we
have
have to adopt it?
The fire prevention ordinance has been adopted by the towns of Tilton.
So the town has to adopt it in order for it to be actually enforceable
So
in
now
that
that's
town?
our guideline, that's what we are enforcing, that's what we go
But
by.
aren't we enforcing the state law? I mean, what does it matter whether the town, I don't understand why the town has to adopt it when it is a state law.
It's
Like the-
something-
They can have their own ordinances too.
But
can
they would
create
usually be
their own.
more restrictive than the state law that's already there. I don't understand why we have to have
It's
an
more vague.
ordinance to say.
Sometimes they can be more restrictive.
So the state law is always the fallback. Let's say the fire department didn't do any life safety inspections. Let's say we relied on the state fire marshal's office to do them. They would utilize the state fire code to do that, because because that's the state code. By having the ordinance adopted, it gives you more local authority to do this.
Okay, that answers my question, thank you. That's what I was looking for, because, you know, I know as a landlord, you have to have hardwired smoke detectors and certain, you know, so I don't understand why it had to be adopted by the town, but that makes more sense. So basically, being adopted by the town gives the fire department or health code officer or whatever the permission to
I
enforce
can
it.
see like things like that you can do, you can put those in and put in the door closers and whatnot, but like, I can't change I'm not gonna change the structure of my entire building, so you can fit
Forget
to
it.
the window. Right,
Me too.
it just, you know, I think
One-
that's,
There are a lot of old
One
buildings
change
in
in
town.
there,
dominoes
well, there
in my
are,
house.
And I
exactly.
know one landlord, not mine, thank goodness, but I know one landlord that when he saw that, he said he was gonna walk away from his stuff if it passed. He was
Yeah.
just gonna walk away.
Well, I know
I think
some
there'll be
are
a lot
popping
of
up
them.
for
He couldn't
sale.
afford to have it done.
He's not the only
Right.
one.
No.
He's not the only
Yeah.
one.
A lot of
that
people are like,
said
I'm gonna sell my
And
stuff
that will
and get out,
destroy
get
our
the hell
town
out.
if
Right,
that
I've heard the
happens.
same thing from
And they
people,
won't be,
right.
you know, he'll try to sell, but no one's,
No
one's gonna
one's
buy
out.
either.
That's
so
right.
what's gonna happen there is they're gonna stop paying taxes on it, they're gonna walk away
Mhm.
from it, and
Mhm.
then it's unpaid taxes to the town, so
And nobody's gonna wanna buy it. so
there's
they're
a
gonna
lot
have-
of aspects to look at this.
Yes,
It's
there
a
are.
very, very delicate
Probably just
It is.
situation, it's
Yeah.
delicate.
There's landlords that would buy it.
There's a lot of unintended, I
Well,
It's
there are
it's the
developers that would
it's the
love to buy
unlivable
it.
situations that we really need to kind of focus on in
Can
this.
we also be very careful when we're saying like unlivable situations and things, and I'm not picking on that word,
Yeah,
but a lot of times I feel like, because we're all sitting here, and we're all fairly comfortable, and, you know, that's great, you know, my house is kind of dirty right now, it's gross, but, you know, but I'm pretty sure Catherine could go in there and say, it's fine. But that's my standard. And just because my standard is different from Lisa's standard,
Right.
different from her standard, it is somebody's standard, and I don't think that anybody here should be able to say, well, you know what, your cat box is disgusting, and your cat pooped outside your box 3 times, and that's obviously been there for a few days, so.
I get that, but when I'm talking extreme situations, and I think Tim has seen some extreme situations along with Catherine, and I've certainly seen the pictures of extreme situations. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
I've
very
owned
big,
extreme situations.
and I'm talking about those
I
extreme
can't-
situations where children should not even walk in the door, never mind live in the door.
due to
I have-
just landlord neglect or tenant and landlord?
I'm
I can't-
well,
can't-
probably
right.
both.
But I
They're
can't
cottages
say-
that people made into apartments that shouldn't have been made into apartments, and they're
Right.
one room, and they have heaters and no bathroom facilities, and, you know, it's those kinds of situations where
But
unfortunately
those
there's.
are like building codes again, and not, I just don't want us to be.
But you
I
have
just
to
don't-
then
I
again
wanna give
turn
you-
back on the ordinances.
Right.
That's
So
the thing that we're
How do
looking
you
at.
help the landlord be like, so I rented, and I put in mine now, I have to, I put in 1 bedroom, maximum occupancy, 2. Because I've had people show up with 6 people
Yeah.
to come rent a 1-bedroom apartment, I'm like,
Yeah,
what are you
I get
doing?
that too.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm like, no, there's 1 bedroom, you can't have 6 people in here, it's, no.
According to this, not
Right.
only do you have to have
Right.
only 2 people, but it has to be a certain size. Who are we as landlords to tell a married couple they can't sleep in this bedroom because
And have
it's
their
too small
newborn.
for 2 people?
But, or you rent to 2 people and they move 4 people in. Then you're, right, and then I don't wanna be fined from an ordinance saying, you have 6 people living in there, because, right.
And I
And it's-
understand
and it's
squalor, and
like-
I understand
right.
disgust, like I said, I own places like that. But I cannot say to somebody that, I can't say, clean your house, and I can't say, you know what, we emptied a place a month ago where someone was pooping in their couch. Okay, they had layers of, they pooped, they put down another plastic bag with like a market basket bag on top of that and a towel. They pooped, another. I didn't know that was going on. You know, that's not me.
It's not
That's
a
not
reflection
down
of
to
you.
me
Right.
as a landlord that's
Right.
going on.
So we need to make sure.
You know,
that
what
we
I'm
keep
saying,
those
I own
in.
those places, I mean, I do, it's disgusting, but that's not down to
Right.
me, and that's not,
I
that's
hear you
not
loud
my
and clear.
responsibility.
Even if you do get in and you say that's not part of your rental agreement, you can give them a 30 days You gotta get out,
Where you didn't
and then
finish.
you gotta go to
Oh.
court.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can't, you
Then
can give
it's 90
somebody,
days.
you can give somebody 7 days, because in that case, I would say that, A, they're destroying my place, and they're
health and
interfering
safety.
with someone else's quiet enjoyment, because you can smell poop in the hallway.
I would say that's
But-
health and safety too.
Right.
But there, I mean, there are laws there, but we have to be able to get in. And I just, it really bothers me when
say-
people talk about like different standards.
Right, it's my standard to
Because-
shower every day.
Right.
Someone else's standard might be to shower every
Yeah.
3 days.
But that doesn't
See,
make
you
them
went in,
bad.
You're not
Right.
gonna hold that against her. You're gonna see, clearly see that that's a
Right.
tenant, that's the tenant's issue. You're not gonna.
Exactly.
I mean, clearly it's a health violation, but that's not her fault. You're not gonna mark her for that. You're,
Right.
would you?
So.
Not her, but the health,
I
not him.
don't do like
For the health.
that helps. I do have the authority to do some of that. There are certain things, unfortunately, the way the code is written, that it ultimately falls back on the property owner. A great example is smoke detectors. State fire code says that it is the property owner's responsibility to maintain working smoke detectors, even though I know that the tenants rip them out and throw them in the drawers probably every other week.
Yep.
But it
And
says,
they can't get into.
but
can't
but
get
the,
in.
but the law says
Yeah.
that it's the property owner's responsibility. And I recognize that, and I know that's tough, and I feel bad. I know for me personally, when I go do my inspections, I have my standard. And I try to work the best that I can with the property owners. I don't go in, I don't stop my feet. I try to meet the intent of the code. So let's say that there is this requirement. Okay, well, what else can we do to meet the intent of that requirement? You know, maybe you have a 13-unit apartment house, and you have a basement down that has heating systems in it. Well, according to the fire code, it has to have proper separation from the units above, because people have to have time to get out if there's ever a fire there. So to have that proper separation, that means putting a bunch of sheet rock up. So an alternative, put a sprinkler head in off the domestic water system. It's gonna be a lot easier, save a lot of money, and it's gonna do the same thing. So there are ways that you can achieve standards and meet the intent. I think it's very important to recognize that.
So in response to that a little bit, I think that when we originally came here today, our thoughts were that this was just ridiculous and how we're extremely unfair to the landlords. However, I think what we're talking about is really we need to be looking at this as a guideline to not only make sure that everybody has the same standards in the town as far as landlords go, but gives us an opportunity, according to the laws and being able to get in or get out, gives us some standards to be able to get in and get out. Because from reading, knowing as landlords how hard it is to have to go in and inspect and stuff like that, if we have ordinances, like you said, the ordinances the town adopts gives a little bit more authority for local people to get in and inspect, it's also gonna give us a little bit more authority. We just need to come up with the guidelines that are behind that. So I think this is actually gonna be more of a guideline, and it may even help out some landlords in getting in and being able to do some of those things that we currently aren't able to do, because now we have something to fall back on. Well, it's lawful for us because we have this, we have to.
Yeah.
If a landlord wanted to go in and couldn't, could they call you or the health office and ask them to go in because they have suspicions? Is that legal or no?
I can say that, I can
They
say
could,
that
they
there's
wouldn't be
law.
able to,
Yes, they could.
it depends on what the suspicion cause is, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
Like if I had
Where
known
it's
poop
at.
couch existed, that's what we call it in my house. If I had known that poop couch existed, then
called
I
the house.
obviously would have called the health inspector and said,
Yeah.
hey, you know, just to throw it out there, cause, you know, I'm kind of famous, infamous or something. The meth house that blew up in Franklin across from the high school. Yeah, okay,
You
I
are
owned
famous.
it when it happened.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I get really ticked when we're talking about, well, landlords should have known. No, you don't know.
no, you don't.
And-
The
and
people
I
that say
had-
that aren't landlords.
Right,
Absolutely.
but, and I had been in that building, and I hadn't, just been in there. So, but so we don't always know. And quite honestly, I don't think a document, me saying, well, I'm gonna come in and inspect, I wanna take a peek. Because those were nice people, and I was in and out of there all the time. So
But
there's some
see, now,
things we just don't know.
I shared a porch with my tenant. I mean, it's a duplex. I shared a porch with my tenant. She was a chef. I ate food that that woman cooked, and to see that kitchen, I seriously threw up for weeks. I threw up for
Oh,
weeks.
absolutely, tenants are great at hiding things when they wanna.
I never,
Yeah.
But so are
ever
homeowners, and
knew.
I think
Right.
I think we can't lose sight of the fact that homeowners and tenants, really, we're all the same people. It's just,
I agree.
some of us
I
are
know.
renting a place out and
That's right.
a tenant
Exactly.
often. But I was raised to take care of where I live, no matter who owns it. Some people weren't raised like that,
Not at all.
but that's not,
Right.
I don't think that's our,
I don't know,
our
man,
judge.
I'm just renting, I'll pour bacon grease down, clog up all
The
your
sink,
drains,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's-
Flush my
But they
damn
might not
place.
have, but they might do that in their own home as well
Also,
because they didn't
right.
know.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, the amount of kids, you talk about bacon grease, the amount of kids I have to tell in my classroom, don't do that, don't put that in the sink. Why? Well, because. But it's not, again, it's not always because someone's just out to get us or, oh, down with the man,
It's just like
you know?
adults, right.
They just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
A lot
don't
of
know.
times.
Female tenants, I'll explain to them, don't flush your
Yeah.
feminine products, please. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
conversation with my daughter.
You're on a septic, you're not on town sewer.
Right.
even
So-
town sewer.
Even
it-
town
it
sewer.
clogs the
They'll
pumps.
clog it up.
It clogs
Yeah.
their pumps, and then they gotta come out and unclog it, and then it's costing more money in your sewer bill.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's not good for any systems
Right.
at all, right?
But it's amazing how many girls don't know that.
And again, because nobody teaches them. So I just want us to be very cognizant when we're talking about things. I don't want people labeled, oh, well, the tenants,
Or the
The
landlords,
people,
both
or the
ways, it's like not
landlords,
all
or-
of them, there
right?
are bad instances in all cases and
Mhm.
good instances.
So these guidelines need to be really ambiguous on, who would, should be targeting one or another, even line by line. It shouldn't be like this one. It should be just guidelines for every human being.
Right, we need to look at both sides and
Right.
give us the ability
Right.
to be able to go in and,
Way.
right.
And it's
The-
really
Show on
important
TV
for,
last night about, rehabilitating urban renewals, that they had on TV last night about urban renewals. It was pretty interesting, and I found myself gasping, thinking, oh my God, is that what we're doing?
can I redirect just for a second? The moderator mentioned that we have alternates because we had a couple of people on the board that might not be able to make meetings due to travel and health issues. Is it possible to know who it is that doesn't think they might be able to
It
make all
was-
the meetings?
Health was me, but it was just the 3 weeks in March. I'm having brain surgery, so I won't be here.
Well, that's no excuse.
I won't be here if I die.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep.
Do we,
keep that in
are
mind.
we, that was the other thing, because he didn't say that, and I couldn't find it written anywhere, are we non-voting alternates if we're here? Or is it,
Yeah,
like,
I would
are
think
we-
the alternates would be non-voting, right?
Right,
Unless
unless you
one
step
person's
in,
not here.
right.
and then we rock, paper, scissors for who gets to vote?
Oh.
Could we as a board maybe vote to actually have the alternates, if they want, become actual members?
I don't think so,
No, I don't
because
think
the,
so.
the town meeting created
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
committee
Yeah.
exactly the way it was, and that's why,
The town would have to vote to
Mhm.
expand the committee.
right, and then.
But we can treat the
moderator.
alternates that show up at the meeting as they, and what
And that's
their
why they
opinion
come
is.
to the
and
meetings,
then-
so that they
right.
know the backup. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why they come. I'm an alternate budget committee, but I go to all the meetings, because in case, I don't know what's the history is if, John doesn't show up.
And then if John doesn't show up and there's a vote, do you vote?
I vote, yes,
Okay.
yep.
Rock, paper, scissors, I'm pretty good at it.
I got
And
you.
then you would, but,
Also, why did we have an even number? That was something I didn't understand.
No, there wasn't.
No, there was
It
7.
Oh, that's right, oh, there is, okay.
7
is
Well, that's right, because I
It should
counted when you
be-
weren't here yet.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's
Lisa.
7, right, there's 7 of us.
I was on time.
Yeah,
7
yeah.
members.
We were all just eager to be here. So do we need to, you said after an hour and a half, you sort of lose your focus or whatever, so.
Yeah, I would,
If
actually,
we-
I was expecting tonight's meeting to be a lot shorter. We don't actually have them.
So I was
I
gonna
don't
make a
think you were
motion.
expecting to do minutes for tonight's meeting,
I
so.
was gonna make a motion
So-
to adjourn. if,
So I guess,
One quick
second that.
question.
Yeah, please, go
Just-
ahead. And
Do we have a full-time building inspector, or is it just part-time for town of Tilton?
20,
Part-
25,
Part-time.
24
Okay.
hours a week.
Alright.
And who is that?
Al Plant.
It is still Al, okay.
Yeah.
He's my neighbor.
And-
Okay.
And Daria is our land use coordinator.
What exactly does that entail?
Oh, I'll tell you all about it
Planning board.
sometime. Yeah,
Zoning.
stop in and there's
Anything planning.
plenty, yeah.
And are you here full-time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just full-time.
Yeah, so I guess going back to the discussion of alternates, my plan would be to basically give alternates the same speaking privilege that board members have. In other words, if it's discussion that's intended to be among the board, the alternates would participate. And that, and then, the general public would sort of be given the second opportunity to talk when we open it up to the general public. Does that work for everybody?
Do we do it like
As
a
far
school
as-
board where the school board meetings where you have like public comment in the beginning and then we have like our whole meeting and everyone chit chats and we go down our agenda and then at the end you can also have public comment. And then that way people in the public isn't just constantly chiming in.
Yeah, no, public comment will be, let's say, some meetings can be less formal than others, right? If things aren't getting contentious or people aren't stepping all over each other, the chairman maybe just doesn't have to do it. If somebody wants to interrupt somebody and it's going okay, fine. But I think, there will be times where the public is definitely told they're not gonna be permitted to speak until it's time for public comment. The order of how we do that, I guess we could discuss at future meetings. Again, the regulation talks about this board establishing the rules of procedure. So, again, I think Robert's rules, my thought would be to have the board get first discussion and then open it up to public comment and then let the board respond to that public comment.
See, I prefer to do it, like, if you're talking about one topic, and we talk about it, and then if there's somebody in the public who has a comment or a question about that topic, to allow them to speak, raise
Yep.
your hand, and then you can speak to that, that's how we do it.
So public
Or I
comment
feel-
after each
After
topic.
After
each
each
topic,
section, okay.
right, because by
Oh,
the time
yeah,
you get
no,
to
you
the
don't-
beginning or
right.
the end, you're like,
Hmm.
all right, this person's making notes, and they gotta wait till the whole meeting, and they really only wanted to talk about licensing or.
Right, I wasn't
Yeah.
suggesting if we're gonna talk about, 10 different things, that the public has to wait until the end of the meeting.
Right,
No,
because
of
that's how the
course.
school board does.
Yeah, no.
So our agendas, they'll be posted online for the general public to view?
Probably. The legal requirement for a government body meeting is posting it in 2 places within 24
I think
hours.
for transparency, I like it online.
How do we get the word out that?
Yeah, we
public
can
is
put it on
invited? 'Cause
our
I think
website.
a lot of the public, the town doesn't even know that they can attend. How do we get that out that they can attend?
Well, we could talk about ways to promote what we're doing or broadcast what we're doing. But again, by law, we're gonna be posting in 2 places, and most likely one of those, at least 2 places, and most likely one of those will be the website. So the agendas will be online, most likely. Again, it's, we do have
Right.
some flexibility. No,
The agendas, and once the videos are posted, usually what will happen is we'll pass the video to Tim Pearson, and then Tim Pearson will post it usually the next day, most often within 24 hours unless something
Does he
happens.
review
It's
all these
40
videos?
days. Does he review them? No, post them.
It's unedited.
It's unedited.
Oh.
It's unedited. So he posts the video and it will be under housing standard, and then you click on it. And then as the minutes are approved, then the minutes go on under housing standard as well. So the agenda is posted on the front page, usually as the selectmen's, it will say agenda, housing, it will say agenda, board members, and then it will, how to contact each one of us, that will be all on the website. And then as the minutes are approved, then that will be on there as well.
Is
I
it
have
gonna be
one more
this?
comment before we adjourn. Are we gonna set our meetings out, or are we just gonna discuss every month when our next meeting's gonna be, or are we gonna do the first
First
Tuesday?
Tuesday of every
First
month.
Tuesday is
Maybe I
7.
missed that, sorry guys.
That's right.
First
At 7 is every.
Yeah, I think that's what everyone was saying. Yeah.
Will our addresses be on here? Online?
Publicly,
Usually not. It's
Okay.
usually just what's online is usually our email and our telephone number. If you choose not to have that telephone number, just an email, then just let Dari know and he can, just let Tim know.
Is
I
it,
don't
Generally,
wanna
our addresses are not on there at all.
If somebody
just
wants it,
wanted
they
to-
can find it.
Oh, I know, but how easy is it for kids
Listen,
to
mine-
find my
mine's
address
not
and
on
phone
there.
number as a high school teacher? I'm like, they all
Right.
know where I live anyway, but I
Yeah.
really,
I mean, even to, if someone didn't want their email address on there, even, I mean.
You don't, it's not necessary to have it, but,
Sometimes it's nice if they wanna,
Yeah.
right, they're more
as chair, it would be important,
comfortable with
right.
somebody.
Mhm.
Right, to
Tim
contact.
can set up, an email of like housing standard at tiltonnh.org, and then it goes to all of us at once. It's like if you email right now to Board of Selectmen at
Just
tiltonnh.org,
every-
it goes
all
to
you-
every single one of us. If you just click on our individual names, it just goes to us. But Board of Selectmen goes to all of us. Budget at Tilton NH goes to all the budget committee members. And so Tim can set that up if that's what you folks want to do.
I think that's a good idea.
I mean,
I
No,
like
no,
that.
that's what-
yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
really
just-
like that idea.
And then like planning board has that as well. I mean, Jane Alden is the chair, and so you, when they want something to go out to planning board that's, that needs to be said, and they send out the documents, and it goes to planning board, it goes to all of them at once. Now you're not typing every single email. And when they click on the website, it says planning board, you click on it, it goes to all, everyone. I mean, we could do that, we can set that up as well, and then it goes to everyone.
That seems like a neat
Someone
idea.
else
The
is
only,
not checking
the only
my email.
concern I would have with that would be that, really, we want people to come to these meetings to share what they have on their mind. So, again, it goes back to that same idea, fine, like, if somebody wants to send this whole group an email, great, and we'll get it all, but we just have to be careful and realize, all right, this is something that we need, if we wanna talk about it, we wanna take it up at the meeting, but not just, immediately start.
I think it would be important to post, to get the agendas posted. A lot of people read the agendas online. There's an awful lot of people that read
Yes.
the
Yeah,
agendas
they watch
online.
And then then they'll know, when they see the agenda, and then they'll say, oh, I want it,
I wanna go,
Mm.
right.
Or they'll call and they say, well, what is this?
Or
new
they're
on the
traveling
agenda?
and they might wanna send an email.
Right,
I know a
and-
lot of business people that own
Exactly.
property that travel, and they just can't make it.
And if it becomes really close into the public hearings, like if we have public hearings as a select board, and if it's about a particular item, we allow people to write in and say, this is what they wanna speak about, and we'll read that at the public hearing, if it's, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, and I think that we should, allow that as well, but, closer, when it gets closer to public hearing and we've got a document that's pretty well put together and it's yay or nay, there's gonna be some input from the public, and if they can't make it on a particular night that we set as a public hearing, you may get some of that feedback in via an email, and you might wanna choose to read that at the public hearing or not, if that's up to you. That would be the choice of the board.
Would the Echo accept our agenda for every meeting and print that, you think?
If it's emailed to her, yes.
It costs money,
Or does
The-
I
it?
mean,
But the agenda?
yeah,
Or
to
press.
post an agenda, to post
As
our
a
agenda.
press,
Right, right, I mean,
As a meeting, right,
yeah,
it
maybe we
does.
could do it as a press release, and they do,
Mhm.
there may be a way we can,
Well, you could
But
do it,
some
I think you
people-
could do a press release to say, go to the town of Tilton's website to, right, or,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get
just
the word out,
something, because
right.
a lot of people don't check
or they
the
don't.
town's website, but they read the Echo because it's free.
If you write in before Monday noon to Donna on a press release, it will be put in as a letter, and then people read the letters and, say, as a member of the Housing Standard Committee, we're meeting the first Tuesday of every month, come and see what we got,
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for people,
Right.
because I know there are a lot of people interested in what we're doing. That would make that a lot
chairs over there.
Right,
Well,
that's
we
what
can
I was
always
saying,
meet
like,
upstairs.
I guess that word
We can always meet
you know.
upstairs in this one room, so that's a lot more room.
So before entertaining a motion to adjourn, I guess I just want to quickly go over next meeting. My thought is, again, I'm trying to get from you guys some of these different documents we've talked about and get those distributed out, so that at our next meeting, I guess, maybe having a little bit more discussion about what's in existence and what gaps this ordinance would fill, so that we really feel good about going forward. And then maybe to have, if you wouldn't mind, just going over your checklist as part of that. And what was the other thing I just had?
He's gonna do it anyways. And it'd be good for landlords to know ahead of time,
Absolutely.
right? Maybe I can get some of this done before he even shows up.
And then I guess maybe, after that, if we have just maybe some time to have some similar discussion like today, go over and, if folks, has everyone read this? I couldn't hear what you said,
The whole
okay.
thing, no.
So maybe
No,
we should
I
take
haven't.
another look at it and then just have
I get-
general discussion like we did this time about
It's not
what we're
easy
seeing.
reading by any means.
No, it's
No.
No, but I think it's
legalese that
important
I-
that, you know, suffer through it and get.
Can you
and-
get the
and
Belmont
read-
one you said?
Yeah, read it.
Uh,
Well,
As
I'll
a
put it
board
up
member,
there,
we should
but hard
probably-
copy.
I have the Belmont one,
But to
I
read
don't
it on
have.
my computer.
So does that sound good for next meeting,
It does.
agenda?
Yes.
Okay,
I'll
all
give
right.
it to Gary to email out.
Sounds great.
Yes, we're gonna review what we have from other towns that we get in your fire safety checklist.
And minutes go to you to be approved, or to approve by.
Oh. Yeah, you'll send them to me, yeah,
Actually-
and then we'll approve them as a.
Usually, right, that email would be good, cause then you could send them to everybody who could read them and say, oh, no, I didn't,
Yeah,
we
okay.
wanna change this, and then at the next meeting, you just say, who, does everybody approve them or not approve them? Or if you have any changes.
I'm gonna email Tim tonight and ask him to set up.
Oh, sure, yeah, that'd be great, yeah. Let's see, so what are we saying, minutes, when you write them, you're basically saying, once you write them,
draft.
you'll send them out to the group,
I can send them to
so
the
that
group.
everyone can take a look, yeah, that works for me. So, shall we adjourn?
Yep, you're right at your hour and a half,
Something
you're right on time.
Yes,
He was gone about a half hour ago, so.
I know, we can talk about
That's
this
why
for
I was
hours,
so
that's why I'm
confused.
saying a time limit's good, cause you can talk about this for
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys
hours and
obviously
hours and
bring a
hours,
lot of
right?
knowledge,
Okay,
definitely.
motion to adjourn.
Well, I've enjoyed a lot of.
We
the
have a
input.
motion,
I
do we have a
second.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Well, I can't second, sorry. Somebody else does.
I'll second.
Why?
Okay, there you go.
Because you're an alternate?
Oh,
Oh, yeah, that's, we gotta get used to that, I guess.
No, I
Oh, my
haven't,
God.
That's gonna be fun.
We had a chance to talk about it.
It's funny, you talked about the comment.
He said he was gonna try stuff, I don't know if it was
Right.
the
She's
person
like,
sitting
oh,
at the
no, really,
table.
I
delivered
like,
that.
oh,
It's
really?
got a job
It
well
tastes
over
good.
in Venture
I'll
Lodge
tell you
restaurants.
Yeah.
A lot of my
She's like,
favorite
"More than
restaurants,
Roman noodles."
never there again.
Most likely, he would
They would
be.
be amazed.
Yeah, I was.
What's this? He does have a lot of
That's
experience.
what I was talking about.
From Massachusetts.
Oh,
Article that was put
okay.
in the second newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
And
Third.
actually-
Third? Yeah, right? Third?
I don't remember whichever day it is.
The first Tuesday.
Moderator's response to it. It's like, no, that's not what I said. But we should make
It's,
an article, but.